Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. This is something that many of us are dealing with today. And the number of people that have been affected by this has escalated since COVID and continues, even though COVID, is in our rear view mirror. And I'm talking about depression. Many of us dealing with that and anxiety. How can you deal with that? What's causing it? We're going to talk with somebody today that helps people with this all the time. And he's just amazing in his insight and kind of breaks it down and makes it very clear to understand as a psychotherapist. Dr. Barry Pilson is with us on the program. Hi, Barry. How are you?
Fine, Steve. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy talking to you.
Same here. Same here. And this is an important one that we're not that other subjects aren't as important, but this one affects many people. And are you seeing more and more people afflicted by depression in the last few years?
Well, anxiety and depression have really been with us for a long time. I think the bad news from the pandemic is there was definitely an increase in both of those psychiatric diseases, if you want to call them that. And the other side of that, though, is at a lot of levels, the medical as well as media, we seem to be paying more attention to it. We've taken some of the stigma out of it and are kind of grasping that, in some ways these are conditions of the human, especially in certain times and in certain environments. So I think we're getting a little better about not stigmatizing it. And one of the reasons I think you could say we end up seeing more of it is because it's come above ground, so to speak, and people are more willing to deal with that, which is always good, really.
I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Yeah, because we're more comfortable talking about mental health challenges than, let's say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or more. To the point where somebody may say, "Yeah, I'm going to see my psychiatrist, my therapist, psychologist, whatever it might be." It's like I'm going to go talk to my friend. That's kind of what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, I agree. In fact, it's become almost common day interaction to talk about, oh, my therapist said, or my therapist stated, when 25 years ago, that was hardly ever said.
Yeah, you would never say it. And
That
if
was,
yeah,
yeah,
if you did, people look at you like, "Oh, that one's got a little trouble going
yeah.
on there."
Oh, you go to therapy?
Yeah,
Now it's, oh, doesn't everybody do that?
right. Oh, you mean you don't have a therapist? What's wrong?
Right,
Are you
right.
okay?
What's the matter with you?
Yeah. So can we break it down? What's going on when
Yeah.
somebody says or they feel depressed?
Yeah, I would like to break it down a little bit because I think because it's used so often in our everyday language too, it can be a little bit confusing. First of all, to piggyback a little bit on what we were talking about last week with anxiety, the way I view it is anxiety and depression are very much linked together. A lot of times I see them as different sides of the same coin. We talked last week about anxiety often being fear driven, resulting in behavior where we seek to avoid issues as we seek to protect ourselves. So, a quick response to protecting yourself is to avoid, right? And in avoidance, sometimes it's not the best way to deal with our fears because it doesn't really resolve anything. Though it might be an immediate kind of quick, helpful response. All right. Now, what will happen sometimes we had also mentioned that with anxiety, you have certain, with fear, in terms of a quote, avoidant or even a flight or fight response, you get certain hormones released in the brain. That, adrenaline is one of them. And what it does is it gets you ready for action. The problem is that sometimes over time is the release of the adrenaline or cortisol is another type of hormone related to that, is that it wears us out. It wears us down. So if you're in a fight, just in a logical way, if you're in a kind of ready for action, flight or fight mode, you're going to get exhausted, after a while. And that's what will happen is that people will kind of collapse, if you want to call it that, under those kind of hormonal influences or under that kind of strain. And then that results in a lot of times symptoms that we end up calling depression. So depression is often triggered by a kind of an ongoing anxiety where we just kind of, like I said, collapse. Now,
Hmm.
actually, some people even see that as positive. Why is depression so prevalent? Why is it? Why do so many people go through that? Well, besides the fact that um, uh, we're in a mode of trying to protect ourselves. Also, sometimes when you just get tired and exhausted, and you're quote depressed, is it gives you a chance to maybe reorganize yourself, take a rest,
Hmm.
reset, and if we're in a simple way, when you're working too hard and you need to take a break, you need to reset. Okay, that's kind of the same concept, really, and in that way, sometimes depression, if handled properly, if attended to in a way that doesn't just immobilize you, but sort of put you in a motivated process to reorganize, then it may be helpful, actually, you see. Even though we don't tend to think of it that way, because in our culture, when we think of depression, we think, oh, bad, got to get rid of it. Oh, I can't feel that way. Well, sometimes you need to just take a break, pay attention, and again, reset or reorganize things if you can. Now, a true depression clinically is a lot of times you're not able to do that. You're not able to reset. You're not able to reorganize. You're literally immobilized a lot of times, and
Hmm.
and so your thinking goes dull. You may be oversleeping. You may be undersleeping. Your appetite is off. So that's more of a clinical depression. And the reason I'm making the distinction is a lot of people say I'm depressed when they're really not depressed in a clinical sense. They may be tired, they may be exhausted, they may be over anxious, but they're not depressed in the sense of being immobilized.
Can I ask a question based on something you said when we first started talking? In that
Sure.
you said that anxiety and depression were, you know, the same but different sides of a coin. Um, when I think of anxiety, I think of acceleration. Like, I've got a lot going on. When I think of depression, it's more somber and more chill.
Yes. Yeah.
How are they very much related? Because they seem very different.
Yeah, they do seem, and that's what's a little confusing about it. Okay.
Right.
So, again, the anxiety, in a way, in some ways, it's not that it feels good, but it gets you moving, it gets you agitated, it gets you going. Okay. The depression, like I also said, feels like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. All right. Well, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Sometimes it's a good place to start with, okay, if I don't know what to do, maybe I need to think about things a little bit differently. All right.
Mm.
Maybe how do I reframe what I'm dealing with instead of just saying, oh my God, I don't know what to do? Uh, how do I listen? Maybe I need to talk to somebody. Maybe I need to do some research. Maybe I need to read something. So the point is that it's just a different process that I think we've evolved a little bit into to help us adapt a little better and sometimes to the world around us.
Mm. So let's say that we've been diagnosed, it's real.
Yeah.
Uh, Depression is upon us. What do we do? How do we get
Well,
out?
that's yeah. I mean, that's a good question, of course, and and if it's upon us in terms of, like I said, being immobilized and really, feeling like you're hopeless and helpless. I mean, quite frankly, uh, in that case and in that
Mm.
situation, that needs to be discussed with somebody. Medication may be helpful to begin to mobilize you again, okay? To begin to combat some of the destructive processes that have gone on, with the adrenaline overload. Um, Now, I would say that in general, quite frankly, that most of these quote antidepressant medications, which are basically are what we call serotonin enhancers. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter of the brain that helps us process things a little better, that helps improve the wiring between the neurons, actually. But anyway, to make a long story short, oftentimes they're overused. And it's kind of, oh, you're depressed here, take some Prozac or something like that, without the accompanying behavioral thought, feeling kind of exploration that is also helpful in making changes. Because the real key is, in terms of adaptation in general, and this is where psychotherapy is helpful, is in assessing what changes are helpful towards constructive goals. And that's really what you're trying to seek, okay? So anyway, at base, medication may be helpful. But you have to be willing to sort of explore your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, because that's kind of the window to a brain. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you behaving? Those are the areas that we can identify that help you with your functioning. Now, one of the keys to anxiety and depression is, and this is, a lot of people will say, well, you need to change your thoughts. That's that's called cognitive therapy. It's helpful, okay, but I think the quickest way to really change is to concentrate on the behavioral part of the equation, okay? It may be hard to change some of your thoughts. It's certainly hard to change your feelings. A lot of times we feel what we feel, okay? The good news about feelings forever. A thought can kind of stay with you over and over and over. That's that sort of obsessiveness that we get into when we're worried. And we have the thought over and over and over. And a lot of times, especially they're kind of catastrophic thoughts. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose my job. Oh my God, this person said that. Therefore, I'm about to, lose my job. Oh, my spouse is angry at me. What does that mean? Is she going to leave me? So you get into that obsessiveness. Okay. It's very difficult to change that too, quite honestly. But the quickest, shortest way to make change is actually through your behavior. Behavior is slower, all right? You don't just, you kind of think automatically and you feel automatically. But you behave a little bit. Now, a lot of people behave automatically too, right? But it's a better chance for you to be more deliberate about your behavior, and that you can make a plan to change that and follow through on that, okay? And that's helpful. That's why, that's why it's a simple, people will say, well, you want to feel better, exercise. Well, actually, that is helpful. It's helpful to move, to exercise, go for a walk, do anything, okay? But you see, behind that action is that's a behavior you can do that can help implement other changes in your thoughts and feelings. So you start with your behavior.
What's actually going on when somebody does exercise? Why is it so beneficial? I don't know if we can, get into the release of certain chemicals that just support somebody.
Yeah, well, that is it actually. Besides the fact that toning your muscles and sort of paying attention to your whole body, instead of just your brain, just your
Sure.
thoughts and feelings, that you're triggering your muscles and ligaments and everything else, is it does release some neurotransmitters that are beneficial to you, such as dopamine, such as endorphins is the main thing. Okay, when you hear people talk about a runner's high, or you don't just get to a runner's high because you walk around the block one day. By the way, it takes some work to get there. But the point is that it does release some endorphins, which does go to the pleasure centers, which does comfort you. It does comfort you. I mean, look, we're meant to be mobile, okay? I mean, we are very, we walk around, we move around. I mean, we occupy the whole earth as mobile creatures.
Sure.
That's when you look back in history. We have these great migrations of people. over the years, starting on certain continents and moving to other continents, actually. We have a pretty clear historical record about that. But my point is that being mobile, moving, is not just good for the body, but it's good for the brain as well. So that's why exercise is so.
Interestingly, we talk about these medications, and they can help, but they take time. So it just, somebody says, I need to feel better. Well, like you said, you need to work on your mind as well. That takes time, but so does the meds. Sometimes it could take 4 weeks before you start feeling something.
That's right. And so the behavior is something you can do, relatively quickly, right? But again, you can't, you don't go from, you might just get up and walk around the block, like I said, or, you might try to approach a task that is simple, but that you've been avoiding. Okay. And so by just approaching a task that is simple and that you've been avoiding, you're going to feel a little better. Okay. Because you're going to feel like, and here we go. See, now I go back into feeling. You behave your way to feeling. You behave your way. You may feel more effective or more competent in your dealings with the world. Okay. So that's so it's a quicker, it's just a quicker process to get to a more constructive goal.
Are there other things that we can do to feel better when we're in the throe of a depressing situation, or we're just feeling that way? Certainly exercise, absolutely. Are there things, in terms of our mind, mantras or things that we can, breathing anything?
Yes. Breathing is helpful. That's another popular thing these days, which is good. Being mindful, being in the present, etc. There's all kinds. One of the issues with psychotherapies is there's all kinds of different psychotherapies, and they've been around for years, and they kind of go in and out of fashion, quite honestly. And the problem with therapy in general, in terms of that process, they're kind of like diets. They all work, and then they all don't work. It doesn't always matter exactly what diet you're on. I mean, it matters to a certain degree in terms of nutrition. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter what psychotherapy engage in. It does, but if you look at studies on the effectiveness of one psychotherapy over another, they're all about equal in terms of producing change. So it's not that the one psychotherapy is the answer to the other. Now, some people match better to certain types of psychotherapy. Okay, and so that becomes more of the agreement between the therapist and the client. Some person might do better with cognitive behavioral therapy. Some person maybe do better with psychoanalysis. Okay, so again, it depends a little bit on the situation. So but let me just reframe it a little bit. There's been a movement, not a movement, but a sort of an integration of some of the therapies in a theory called positive psychology, and the idea of that is to do a little bit of what we're talking about. You try to help people, first of all, not focus on what's wrong, but focus on their strengths. What are they doing that is working? What are they doing that is helping them approach, that is helping them think a little bit more positively? Okay, and so you do that. You help them. You have people again in that sort of depressed. Let me reorganize myself. Is what positive experiences do you have in the present, and where do you experience them? How do you experience them? And how do you attain a little joy and a little inspiration each day? All right. We've talked about that a little bit before in some of our previous discussions. That kind of glimmer of hope, where you do something simple and it moves you into a better state. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the little wins. We don't look at the little wins. We're just looking for big changes, but it doesn't typically happen that way.
Right, and it's the little wins that really make a difference. Oops, sorry. It's the little wins. Sorry about that. it's the little wins that make a difference. It's for a good analogy of that is actually somebody who's if you're a professional baseball player and you're trying to get your batting average up, okay? You gotta look at things closely, and it's the little changes that are probably going to make a difference, okay? That you find, for instance, that your habit of the way you stand next to the plate has thrown your swing off,
Yep.
okay? If you just take one step closer to the plate, I'm just making this up, but it's really true, then that makes a difference in your whole approach to the pitch. Okay, that's the same thing. Okay, it's not that we have to, stop doing what we're doing, but maybe there's one little process that you can engage in that'll make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, just
Maybe
adjustment, slight adjustment.
yes, just a quick one, a simple one, and without expecting that. Okay, now I'm going to be the greatest ball player in the world, but I can get my average up. Okay, so those are that's the process in
It's
general.
it's finding well, that's under the category of just being positive.
Yes, and that's the whole point is, and that we kind of develop a sort of different states. We try to adhere to certain states. An easy, not an easy state to do, but a quick state, positive state is to have gratitude. Okay, we have Thanksgiving coming up, right? And what's one of the points of the holiday is to look at what you're thankful for. It is a good exercise actually, if you're sitting around the table and everybody may say, "What are you grateful for this year?" What has been helpful to you this year, and to recite a little bit of gratitude that you have for what has passed and what you're looking forward to, put you in a positive state of gratitude. Okay, and again, that helps you move forward. That's the key. The key to mental health is sort of moving forward, understanding what's happened in the past or what's happened recently, but not staying stuck in it, but moving forward and feeling like you can be effective and competent in the world. Okay, and again, that's a basic human developmental process. Is how do I develop a sense of competency, a sense of effectiveness? There's a lot of research on people that are depressed sort of learn a helplessness. When you get that kind of complaining all the time, and this I know, no matter what I do, it doesn't work. No matter what I think, it doesn't work. Oh, I tried that, it didn't work. Oh, I did this, it didn't work. So that mantra, if it didn't work, it didn't work, it didn't work, keeps us in a state of helplessness.
Well, it's many believe if you keep saying it's not working, it's not going to work. Guess what? It's not going to work. You asked for it. Like, mom always used to say, be careful what you ask for. Well, you're asking for it. You're creating.
Yeah, you're asking for it.
You're creating your destiny. Barry, best way to reach you if somebody wants to talk about this. I know that you can work with people virtually. Is it just go to your website, barrypilsonphd.com?
You got it, Steve.
Yeah.
See, now you remember my website after all this.
I'm working on it. I just needed to add the PhD at the end.
Right.
So important, everything we talked about today. And there is hope. There is a light down the road. You just have to be mindful of it. And sometimes it might take medication, but it's also, it sounds like it's also the mindset and working with the right person.
Right. And I think, and not to make it complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. We're not trying to we're just a few behaviors may make a big difference. Just that's the whole point.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for being here today.
Okay, Stephen. I will see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.